Welcome. I'm Lorraine Simmons, advisor for the Association for Trauma Outreach and Prevention, ATOP, Meaningful World.
And hi, I'm Andrew Dolinar. I'm the Vice President of ATOP Meaningful World. At our organization, we believe that positive global change begins with each individual. And many people who are trying to do important work are stifled by their own trauma, vicarious trauma, burnout, and other issues that affect their ability to truly engage and uplift those around them as well as themselves. So today we're going to be speaking with Meaningful World's president and founder, Dr. Anya Kalajian, about ways to help people lift themselves up as well as lift up others through things like self-awareness, mindfulness, and other tested practices. So Dr. Ani, I wanted to thank you for being with us and start off by asking you a bit about your journey as a healer and a teacher, as well as the work of ATOP Meaningful World. So can you tell us a little bit about why you started the organization and the work you've done in the time since then?
Well, thank you so much, Andrew. Are you sure you want me to respond to that? I think we'll be here on all day and all night, but I will try a short and a brief version of what made me start the Meaningful World and focus on healing. As they always joke around, psychologists are injured themselves and they start to heal themselves and their families and communities. I too, as a young child, a girl child growing up, minority in Syria, where my father had been forced marched to after the genocide, I noticed the overall collective sadness, depression. And when I inquired, they just denied it because they were trying to protect me. And they said, oh, go do your homework. Nothing is wrong. But I could really feel the sadness. And at times I used to go to the bathroom and cry because they never told me why they were so sad. Apparently, they were still looking for family members who were lost in the genocide and misplaced or dead. So that kind of moved me to focus on healing and at the same time human rights, which we do through our affiliation with the United Nations. That's an integral part of our organization to talk about how to practice the Human Rights Declaration, how to share it, educate, teach it, practice it, as well as the Sustainable Development Goals. So with that, because I, as a girl, was not allowed to ride a bicycle, go outside, things that my two brothers were privileged to do with no question. And for me, it was unacceptable. That is my right, I used to say as an 8-year-old. There's something wrong in the system. So that kind of moved me to be affiliated with the United Nations, learning from the global lessons, other countries and cultures, and share some of our wonderful tools with them around the world and try to learn from them the indigenous ways of healing, integrating Mother Nature, and which makes us unique in healing field and professions. Because other people also work on trauma, but we kind of have a key where we integrate the mind, body, spirit, which other people do, but we also integrate ecology, which is really our signature to be mindful and caring and compassionate with the nature, which really helps us at the end of the day.
Absolutely, thank you. I'm wondering if you could talk just briefly about a couple different missions or work that we've done just to give people an understanding of what we do when we go into these areas after humanitarian crises.
Yes, so that part, after we focus on self-care, the first modules we focus on is self-care, because we don't want to take people, volunteers, to the field where they are subjected to dire life situations, no electricity, no Wi-Fi, no maybe water, running water, and we have to survive in those situations. So if a person has not done yet enough self-care and self-nurture, self-compassion, self-forgiveness, self-love, they're not going to be able to survive in those missions. And our missions have shown that those who have just been excited to travel without really taking time to go through our modules. So the first module, we focus on self-care, which is, you mentioned few of those things that we emphasize, such as emotional intelligence, assertiveness, mindfulness, meaning making, trying to find meaning, a la Viktor Frankl, finding meaning in any tragic situation that we have no control. And after that is when they're ready to go on disaster relief work, which has many steps. The first thing is we prepare before we go anywhere. That's pre-planning and pre-assessment, which involves several areas. Who are the people we are serving? What kind of religious, cultural, educational background do they have? Then their background in terms of trauma history. What is the history? How many and what kind of traumas have they had? And how did they recover? Have they recovered? Because sometimes it takes like a decade or a lifetime to recover. And I can mention Rwanda after genocide, Congo after almost genocide, the Burundi, Palestine, Haiti. There are work in progress. We cannot really sit here and say that there is rehabilitation. It's a very slow progress, maybe a few steps forward and then 10 steps back with certain political challenges, natural disaster challenges, etc. So we need to know their history of trauma and how they have rehabilitated and if they have. And then we need to know the geophysical and political climate, what's going on around in the borders, such as Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Turkey. If there is continuous challenges and war and conflict, then that's going to delay their rehabilitation. So these are all areas that we study and our teams really study before we go on missions.
Dr. Ani, you talked about a lot of negativity and how the interns and people who are going on these missions can be prepared and to take care of their own trauma before they expect to go and help others. But at this time, when we're dealing with a lot of humanitarian crises around the world, but also the emotional toll of the pandemic and other forms of trauma that can be insurmountable, how do you help people understand how to keep themselves more in a positive vein rather than coming to that negativity?
That's a very good question, because we have studied there are several different kinds of traumas. There is the collective trauma, generational trauma, individual trauma, vicarious trauma, and then the horizontal trauma. What you're referring to in pandemics is a collective trauma. And no one has really talked about the pandemic as a collective trauma. We talk about the symptoms, how 40% depression has been increased, 30% anxiety, 40% addiction, abuse, suicide, etc. But it is a worldwide, global, collective trauma, and we need to use the proper words and work on it from the beginning. The wrong words were used as social distancing, and people got into isolation, and more of emotional issues increase. So when fear strikes, then more illnesses are going to be born. Then we need to teach this we are teaching these important lessons through our support groups that we have weekly. And it's our 90th support group this week. We're happy to report. We have resources that we have posted on our website and emailed excessively to all of our contacts and community. We have followed up with individual therapy with those who have shown high level of distress during our support groups. We have had family therapy. So we have outreach to our communities from near and far to help them, educate them that through supplements such as vitamin D3, zinc, and quercetin, they are able to improve their immune system. And instead of being afraid, they can be helpful to someone else. That service and helping others really opens up the energy, expands our energy, and then we are feeling happy, not constricted, and beautiful.
Great, thank you, Dr. Hani. Um, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about, you talked about kind of the emotional and physical toll that this pandemic and other traumatic experiences can have on people. And obviously we know that, that sort of experience can lead to a lot of negative thought patterns, maybe repetitive negative thoughts, as well as negative behaviors. I'm wondering if you could give some advice on how do we become more aware of these patterns and how do we kind of make changes to these unhealthy ways that we're living, thinking, and acting with others.
Yes, our thoughts are like magnets. So when we are in the road of negativity, we find ourselves facing and finding more negativity. And our thoughts, when they are on the negative trend, what we can do is the first thing is the first step is noticing. That's the first important step. Once you have noticed that your thoughts are going towards the negative and the wrong direction, then you can, like the GPS does, rerouting and recalculating, and you will kind of embrace yourself and start seeing something that you can do about it, and ask yourself, what can I do about it now? Instead of, why did this happen? Oh my God, we're victims. We're not victims. And we can transform ourselves to be victors by just changing the channel or trying to recalculating, have a signal, a keyword where you can bring in your mindfulness into action. And the mind, once you are in that mindfulness zone, then you're no longer going to attach to that negativity. And like clouds, you're going to let it just come and go, and observe how you are when you have negativity around you. What is your body doing? How are you reacting emotionally? What's your heart doing? So it's the body, mind, spirit together. And once we are fully aware of that, then we can, just like a vehicle, take it where we'd like to go in a healthy direction, and always with gratitude for each breath that we take, gratitude for each thought. Those negative thoughts that you're talking about, they're like ants, automatic negative thoughts. So we need to transform that into pills, what I call it pills. That's purposeful, loving, intentional, loving thoughts, and mindful thoughts and mindful actions. Once we have mindful thoughts, then what we talk about is head, heart, and hands. Then all we want to do is help others because we feel so good, and we want to share this goodness with others. So we have the head, the heart, and the hands working in unison, in harmony, and we're feeling good, and we're helping others feel good as well. So we're lifting everyone with us. There's an Armenian saying that lift yourself. Yes, that's great, but make sure you take others with you, or else you're up there by yourself and everyone else is down there. There's going to be jealousy, envy, and negativity. So the true leader would be rising and making sure everyone is rising with them. That's the true transformation.
Dr. Ani, I know you and I have had an opportunity to speak about this a little bit. And my question to you was at that time, if someone is deeply depressed or having some severe PTSD, does this type of work get to the root of their problem? What do you recommend for people who are in that desperate kind of state?
Yes, that's a very good question. Those who have a history of severe trauma, they need to do individual work first before joining groups, support group, or other educational and humanitarian missions. We have had someone who went with us, and she was very excited about the mission. She was not in the healing business. She wanted to videotape and prepare a film, and we warned her that she needed to do the workshops and she needed to go through the modules before she went with us. But it was, everything happened so fast. It was the Sri Lanka, the tsunami that happened, and we had to go very quickly, and we didn't have anybody to do the recording. And in spite of all my feelings, we did take her. And in the middle of helping others, she went into hysterical crying. And one of our members, I had to send her to take care of and address the needs of our videographer. We had to continue working with the rest of the group because just like Haiti, everyone was talking about 40 people in my family died, 90 people in my village died, and the numbers were so astronomical, and it was very challenging to cope with that severe kind of trauma, natural disaster that we were addressing. So those who have historical old traumas that they have not had enough time to make sure they have healed, they will have difficulty on missions. So we urge those people to definitely try EMDR for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, electromagnetic field balancing, anything and everything to heal themselves first, so then they can forgive themselves, they can forgive their perpetrators and become victors, and then be able to help others.
You were also talking about the importance of service to humanity through disaster relief and caring and nurturing for Mother Earth. What have been the challenges for national and international disaster relief?
The challenges are both for women and for Mother Nature in terms of, let me start with challenges towards women. Um, we found that a lot of women were not allowed to swim, to learn how to swim in Asian countries, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, etc. So in one of our teams, we had to have a lifeguard with us to start teaching them how to swim. The second challenge for women is the attire and being modest for women in these countries that we serve, Middle East, Asia, and some African countries. Being naked is a huge no-no. They rather die than be naked. So there were times where the rescuers had to rip their saris in order to save them, but they refused vehemently and they chose to die because of the cultural norms and cultural challenges, I would say. I would not say tradition, because those traditions that are specifically against women, they're gender-based violence. I would really like to emphasize that. The other is about men, actually, because a lot of cultures do not allow men to cry, and they wanted to cry. And when they found us alone without their women or any of their friends, then they would be easily crying and sharing their feelings. Even in the Soviet Union, the KGBs, they were crying, but they wanted us outside the room walking, because they said the walls have ears. That's Soviet Union. The walls had ears. So we had to do therapy walking and talking in the freezing cold weather in January, minus 10 or whatever degrees. So these are some of the challenges. And when the money comes, that's another challenge. Money goes to the government, to men, selective few men. And everybody's waiting for disaster relief funding. Women are usually the heads of families and communities. They get zero money. That is another challenge. And whatever you hear, let's say you heard the US gave $1 million, you know that only 200,000 went to the country. And from there, maybe 20,000 went to the area that was affected by the earthquake or the tsunami or whatever the disaster was. That is a very sad situation, but that we have seen throughout the 48 countries that we have served around the world, everywhere. And our country, FEMA, has told us they learned a lot of lessons in our first book in 1995 from Hurricane Andrew. And then when they invited me to work with them with Hurricane Katrina and Rita, I saw them doing the same mistakes. And when I was outraged and I told them, here's the book, here is what your director wrote in 1995. And they said, oh, well, that was another administration. This is another government now. And we're going to start from ABC. So they are not passing along the important lesson they learned on behalf of our citizens. Basically, they learned through Hurricane Andrew in Florida. And then Katrina and Rita survivors had to suffer all along again, because that information was not passed on from administration to administration. These are the political challenges of disaster relief. This is what exactly is happening with the pandemic. Nobody knows what they're doing. Some states are all open and businesses are flourishing. Other states are on lockdown. They're not all dying in those states who are not on lockdown. They're not. I've been following the surveys and statistics. So these challenges continue in disasters, and we need to be vigilant to learn and to spread the positive lessons and enforce that everyone is consistent and not people do whatever they want to do in this. Then it becomes chaos. That's what we are slowly seeing ourselves in the middle of huge chaos now. So everyone has to be vigilant and do the best they can, spreading positivity and help, support, uplifting one another. As we say at the Meaningful World, when one helps another, both become stronger.
So, Dr. Anna, you've been talking a lot about natural disasters, and obviously there's some inevitability to that, especially with the growing threat of climate change. But I'm wondering if you, what your thoughts are as to whether or not we can stop human-made disasters.
Yes, that's like the $1 million question, Andrew. In fact, that's what we've been working on diligently for 32 years. That with natural disaster, we have to focus on preparedness. But the human-made disasters, that is totally preventable. Totally preventable, but there is a big if. If people were mindful, if people were caring, compassionate, and if people cared about Mother Earth and human beings, and if they could manage their emotions, and if they can let go of ancestral and generational trauma, and if they can let go the tribal wars and conflicts, etc., the history shows that humankind is very egocentric, and we are not able to do that. We've been repeating mistakes, human mistakes of wars and greed and terrorism and all kinds of violence, starting from family, domestic violence, starting there, and then governmental violence, then tribal violence, then generational violence. So it is very, very easy if we all commit to nonviolent communication, starting with our thoughts when we have even driving a car, some outrage, rageful people, road rage, whatever they talk about, they actually go crazy by yelling, screaming, cursing, putting fingers out, stopping the car, coming out and fighting, and all this, which is very much preventable and starts with each and every person. But then again, if the person is not mindful, then the collective family has to reach out and try to enforce. There is a little difficulty here because in America, after you're 18, other people are not able to enforce anything. And there are some other countries where no matter how old you are, the larger community and the neighborhood can have a meeting intervention and enforce some therapeutic modalities that would take in order to change their mindset, or have anger management classes, assertiveness techniques, emotional intelligence programs. And the key is forgiveness. A lot of people are angry because they cannot forgive themselves, their parents, their siblings, their neighbors, their um, other people. They have difficulty and they feel like forgiveness is giving another gift to someone else. But before that, it's a gift to yourself, to oneself. Because forgiveness is starting from here, the heart. And I am benefiting before anybody else. Just as anger is here and like a poison, it's affecting my brain, my third eye, my thyroid, my heart, my blood pressure, my muscles, my skin. The whole immune system is impacted and compromised with anger. At the same time, when we engage in loving kindness and empathy and forgiveness, then we are opening our hearts, and energetically we're embracing one another and being uplifted like a parachute or hot air balloon. It's giving that force, the force within to rise. And when you are up, you will be experiencing and seeing the horizon and different colors and different details that you would not see when you're distressed and down and constricted. So forgiveness is a key. And a lot of people say that there are a few quotes here and there saying, you don't forgive because you're giving a gift to someone else. You forgive because you care about yourself. You don't want to suffer, continue suffering with that anger, which is only poison and destroying you. It's burning you up inside. And then you're not able to enjoy life. You're the one who's losing out. So whenever I talk about forgiveness, they think, oh, here she is on a pedestal talking about forgiveness. She may have not suffered anything. And if I continue on talking about what I have suffered, they would be very disappointed. But we encourage people not to assume, because when you assume, you really are closing the door to learning something about someone else. So we encourage people to share with others empathy, so that not only you are opening your heart, but you are also taking half of the sadness or hurt from the other person. And now, as we say at Meaningful World, shared sorrow is half sorrow, while shared joy is double joy. So we make each other happy by just smiling. There's a lot of research that people have done at the toll booths. Just smile at the toll booth person, and all of a sudden, the person that was sitting like this, bored in the fumes, going around trucks and everything, they start smiling. And it's such a wonderful gift to humanity.
Well, thank you, Dr. Ani. You've provided us with a lot to think about today. Um, I'm wondering, though, if you could help us understand how we can integrate all this knowledge, self-care, catharsis, empathy, post-traumatic growth that you talked about, service and humanity, and the forgiveness. How can we integrate this in our daily lives?
Yes, it's a very good question. It sounds like a lot when you are listening, but it is just loving kindness that is practice, self care. Once you are practicing loving yourself and encouraging yourself to do your best every day, then you are aligned. In our modules, we use the fourth module is about nurturing conscientious and mindful leaders. So we prepare people to be leaders. In fact, once you graduate with these four modules, you become Meaningful World Ambassadors. You are a leader, a conscientious leader. You have these tools, and you have the mindfulness to do the best, not moved by greed or anger or insecurity or ego. No, but mindful leaders and conscientious leaders are moved by compassion, by empathy. The challenge for them is, how can they be there for someone else? How can they put their feet in someone else's shoes and be able to lift someone, give an empathic statement, and show the other person you care. And together, we can really address all of these challenges, not alone. So there's no isolation, just more connection, more true mindful connection, geared to overcoming not just these obstacles that are facing us, but other challenges that we can't even imagine that we're going to be addressing in the future. Once we are equipped with the love and anchoring ourselves with beautiful Mother Earth and always taking care of Mother Earth, then we have already won the war with love.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ani, for all of this important and inspirational information. We really appreciate your time today and for all of the wisdom you've imparted to us. For people who might be interested in learning more about the things we've been discussing today and joining a community of like-minded individuals, please consider joining one of our workshops. They're the last Saturday of every month, starting in January of 2022. And they run every month throughout the rest of the year. We also have a support group that meets every Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. You can find more about our upcoming events and register for any of these at meaningfulworld.com. Thank you so much for being with us, Lorraine, Dr. Ani, and all of you at home.
Thank you.